Hi, I'm Rafy Evans, and I am the writer of Don't Forget Where You Belong.
Hi, my name is Ibi Lagundoye, and I am Rafy Evans' editor. Okay, so Rafy, when I was reading this story, it was so great. It really reminded me kind of like of my kind of like adolescence and like middle school and kind of like the drama that comes with it and kind of like all like the middle school kind of like pettiness of it. And like looking back now, do you feel like you could do something like this again, write about One Direction again, considering like their history and like kind of like Harry Styles has a new album coming out, so do you feel like maybe like you might revisit kind of this time in your life?
I don't think I ever could. It was so strange for me to actually write this piece because these were kind of memories that I had really repressed. It wasn't like something that I was extremely proud of, that like, oh, my writing debut was about One Direction. People still, to this day, have extremely like poisonous ideas of what that band is. And for me, it was more of like, this is a way for me to write about something, and I wasn't established creatively that much when I started. So I was just taking these characters that like had already existed. But now I would never, ever write about it. It was definitely a crucial part in like me becoming a writer. The response to it is something that like I really fed off of, and like to this day I still feed off of. But I still love Harry Styles, and I still love One Direction insane amounts, and I will buy Harry Styles' album and I will see Harry Styles on tour. But this is probably something that stayed when I was 14, should stay when I was 14, but I'll always like grow from it.
Right, and when you said like, you know, you kind of repressed kind of like these emotions, like these memories, was it almost like therapeutic for you to write about it this way instead of like actually maybe like going to a therapist or like talking to your parents? Because I know you mentioned you had kind of like a rough relationship with them.
Yeah, my parents didn't know I wrote any of this. The story was getting a lot of views, and like other moms of girls would come up to my mom and say like, oh, like I heard your daughter's writing this story, like my daughter loves One Direction too. And my mom really had no idea what was happening. My dad probably, I don't think, ever knew. To this day, still doesn't know that I wrote it. But it was a way for me to kind of like write through relationships with my parents. It was a way for me to like kind of imagine things differently. And I was writing about like me as I wanted to picture myself and how I was not in that current moment. But I was like, wow, if I can make like Annabelle this person, then like I could be this person, right, kind of thing.
Cool. And so like kind of like moving forward in your writing career, do you want to like revisit kind of like this fiction, nonfiction, like real, and like, you know, not real at the same time as like in terms of like your writing career like long term?
Creative nonfiction is my favorite genre. I have this sort of obsession with truth. So anything that comes from a journal or can be fact-based is something that I'm interested in. That was my one run with fiction in that sense, and I don't think it's cut out for me long term. But if I could write memoirs for the rest of my life, that would be what I did.
And what would you call your memoir?
I have no idea. It would have to stem from something about this, because this is like where it started. Right? But I don't know, I wrote a memoir before, and it was called My Version of the Truth. Because obviously my truth is different from your truth.
Right.
So that would probably be what it was called.
Cool.
Before high school, I wasn't known for any distinct characteristic. Most people are known for being great at a sport, or being a great musician, or for an obsession. But not me. I wasn't particularly above average at anything. I was making the jump back to public school after 3 years of plaid skirts and white button-up blouses, and the freedoms of a public school were overwhelming. The only area in which I thought I excelled was writing, but I had spent my time in Catholic school writing about censored topics in English class, and my parents' recent divorce in private. At the Catholic academy I attended, I had been the only new student amongst 200 kids who had been inseparable since preschool. In times of middle school exile, I turned to my diaries to write about my daily struggles and the secret truths about my peers. But eventually, that turned into filling journal after journal with stories of my unrequited love of my 8th grade crush, Casey. So I decided to stop my traditional nonfiction approach and switch to writing from my imagination. Right around that time, I had stopped listening to top 40 pop hits on my local radio station. My suburbs' airwaves were controlled by what parents wanted, until the repeat of the British invasion by One Direction. The emergence of a new boy band halted my dreams of writing the second coming of teenage memoirs when I discovered the much more popular subgenre of fan fiction. Within the pages of a Sharpie-colored, wide-ruled, 180-page composition book, my high school popularity rose and fell. At the time, I was 14, in love with a boy band, and had yet to understand the components of award-winning fiction. And when you're 14, in love with a boy band, and believe you're meant to be the modern-day best-selling author, you think it's a great idea to create a concoction of the three. One day after JV volleyball practice at my high school's pungent locker room, my friend Veronica timidly asked me if I had seen the band on the blogging site Tumblr. When I told her I had seen them on the site, I tested the waters to see if she was about to start a rampage. "Do you like them?" I remember asking. We were both nervous talking about One Direction at first, as if the band were a taboo subject. She cautiously admitted that she had spent the past few nights looking at everything she could find about them online. From then on, Veronica and I became the One Direction crazed freshmen of Lake Brantley High. Every morning, we would meet in the back corner of that locker room to discuss anything One Direction related. We'd scroll through our phones to find the latest photos, swoon over how good the boys looked, and dream of the day when they would tour in the United States. The group consisted of 4 English boys and 1 Irish boy, all 3 to 4 years older than we were. They sang textbook bubblegum pop and were cuter than any boys I had encountered in high school. Much of my infatuation with them was the true and honest belief that I would date one of them. Realistically, I hadn't yet been involved in any interaction, let alone romance, with a boy when I was 14. But somehow, I imagined that my love life would all change if I met that man. In the meantime, Veronica and I created fan Twitter accounts to help us keep up to date with our boys. An entire fan base called themselves The Boys. We had blog names based on them, things like Weak Knees for 1D or IMTORN. I couldn't have gotten more middle school if I tried, considering the letter O was a 0. We had Twitter accounts based on them too. My first Twitter username was @SpyingOnStyles, after my favorite band member from day one, Harry Styles. We had certain theme days on which we would dress like One Direction members did, Malik Mondays and Tomlinson Tuesdays, which involved wearing stripes and cuffed jeans because Louis Tomlinson wore them. In the mind of a 14-year-old fangirl, none of this seemed ridiculous. In January 2012, I had an unwavering motivation to start the new year by combining my love for One Direction with my new quest to write fiction, creating the Frankenstein product of Butterflies for Harry. Fanfiction seemed like a logical place to start my fiction career. According to the rules of fanfiction.net, I was allowed to use real people as my starting characters and build plots around them. What that meant for me was I was going to write every aspect of my fantasy relationship with the dream boy of my teen years, Harry Styles. It's no coincidence the main female character in my story had the same middle name as I did, or that I named her after my favorite poem by Edgar Allan Poe, the dreadfully morbid Annabel Lee. I was clearly the most creative writer out there, as I used my best friend, Veronica, as the model for Annabelle's best friend, Veronica. Things that were occurring in my real teenage life were subconsciously affecting my fictional life. My storyline didn't contain a father character, probably because my relationship with my dad was at a standstill, though I did write in a role for my mom. But the difference between writing about my real life and writing about my fake one was I didn't have to know Harry Styles personally to write an entire novel about him. That was the point of the project. I was able to make up a completely false character based on a person that actually existed. My Harry was romantic, compassionate, caring, and much less busy than the real Harry. I'd like to think my version of him was similar to the real version of him, but unfortunately, I haven't been given the opportunity to test that hypothesis. And along with my version of Harry, I created the best version of myself in that story. I wasn't the awkward and shy teen trying to fit in at a major public school. I was a confident, charismatic girl who had her life figured out. Though there were lapses in time and one-dimensional characters in my story, none of that seemed to matter to my audience. Up to this point, I had never written publicly under my real name. I used pseudonyms in order to write about my parents without getting in trouble. I was constantly worried that people would find what I wrote and poke fun at it, or worse, expose me based on things I was saying online. But One Direction fanfiction was what I chose to be my perfect writing debut. And the best part was people loved it. I didn't realize the response it was getting until one day at lunch in the cafeteria. My friends and I were discussing what my plans were for the next chapter when homecoming court but never queen Kendall approached my table. We had never had a conversation in our brief history together, so I was thrown off by her visit. "Hey Rafy, do you think you could put me in your story? It's early, and I think it's the best thing I've ever read, so I want to be in it." Me? Put Kendall in my story? No. I think I said something along the lines of my having already written the next 10 chapters, or having no need to create another female character, which was a complete lie, considering the fact that I later wrote in one of my other frenemies, Delaney, into the story when I desperately needed a mean girl character. I said thank you somewhere in there too.